What's up, mamas? It's Dr. Marcy Crouch. I'm a board-certified women's health physical therapist, and we are here to talk about the 6-week mark after having a baby. And I'm going to tell you this. There's nothing magic that happens at the 6-week mark postpartum, but there are tons of things that you can do from day one to make your postpartum recovery easier so you're feeling awesome and a little bit more prepared at that 6-week mark. You know, we get this one appointment at 6 weeks postpartum that clears us for everything that we did prior to having the baby. Exercise, work, sex with our partners. It's supposed to be this time where okay, we're good to go. But when we look at physiology and tissue healing and recovery, 6 weeks is a time frame that came into play for wounds to heal, for stitches to dissolve, for bleeding to stop, to have this tissue healing window of time. But that's not the same as recovery. And I think a lot of times moms feel at this 6-week mark after we've been cleared, quote unquote, to go back to everything that we've been doing, that they should be able to do that without any problems. And that's not the case for a lot of moms. Sometimes yes, but for the majority of us, when we get that all clear mark at 6 weeks, we often feel like, oh my God, there's no way that I'm going to be able to go back to running or seeing clients all day on my feet or being intimate with my partner, because we just don't feel physically and emotionally ready for those things. And the example that I use a lot, and I think this is really helpful because it really kind of puts us into perspective, that if we had, a baseball pitcher, for example, or a soccer player, or somebody that had a knee surgery or a shoulder surgery, we don't tell them at 6 weeks after surgery that they're good to go to do everything that they were doing prior to having the surgery or the injury without any rehab or recovery process, right? It's like, that doesn't happen. We get rehab. We have a team of healthcare providers. There's a plan. We teach our bodies to go through those motions again. We strengthen. We're on pain management. We do all these things. We don't just automatically go back to playing a soccer game at that magic 6-week mark or pitch a baseball game at that magic 6-week mark, because that's not how the body recovers from injury or trauma or surgery. And birth, especially if you have a C-section or any sort of tearing or trauma in the pelvic floor, follows that same hypothesis when it comes to physiologic healing. It's the same sort of tissues. It's muscle, it's nerves, it's connective tissue, it's fascia, it's functional movement. It's all these things that our shoulders and knees have to do, but we don't get the same sort of plan or recovery after having a baby like an athlete would. So I tell a lot of moms, we really should be recovering from baby immediately. I teach them how to start to do recovery stuff from minute 1 after the baby comes out, all the way up until the 6-week mark and beyond. Postpartum recovery is not just 6 weeks, it's months. It can be a year. It can be multiple years. It shouldn't be pigeonholed into this, you do nothing for 6 weeks, and then all of a sudden at 6 weeks, you should be able to do everything. Being a new mom is tough. It just is. And I know from personal experience that the last thing that you want to do is spend more time doing other jobs and adding more to your plate and putting yourself first, because we're constantly concerned about our babies, right? As we should be. But the problem with not putting ourselves first as moms, or recognizing the need to take care of yourself from a physical and emotional standpoint, is that we start to see these long-term problems, both physically and mentally. And there are studies to support that mamas who have physical limitations from delivery have an increased rate of postpartum depression and anxiety. So it's really a tough time. And the medical community, we need to do a better job with providing moms with things that they can start to do from minute 1. Like I say in my programs, it's we need to start changing the way that we're caring for moms from the beginning and not waiting until the 6-week mark where we're already kind of behind the ball, there are 3 kind of main things that I really like to teach my moms to start to do from the beginning. And when I'm talking about the beginning, I'm talking about like in the hospital, like the day after the baby was born. And that's making sure that you're able to start to connect your brain to your pelvic floor in a way that is what we call functional. And I'm going to tell you what that means in just a second. The other one is making sure that you're getting enough fluid and fiber in your diet. So pooping, for example, is a little bit easier and puts less strain on your pelvic floor. Super important. And also, if you're breastfeeding or if you're pumping, you need more calories than you did when you were pregnant. And you become super dehydrated, which can contribute to a lot of early pelvic floor issues. So making sure that you have fluid and fiber is so important. And that starts from like minute 1. And then the third thing is starting to, once you have that connection from your brain to your pelvic floor and your core, is start to incorporate that into things that you're doing all the time, taking care of a new baby, whether that's getting out of bed, whether that's bouncing a fussy, colicky baby, either on a ball or standing, whether that's, lifting the car seat into your car, whatever you're doing on repeat. So when we get ready to exercise or do more difficult activities, you have that foundation in place. So you're able to do them more successfully without pain, without leaking, without feeling like you can't do it. So what do I mean by this? There are so many things that we can do and teach, and this is what I do in my programs, but I want to give you guys something now so you can start to apply it right away. The most important thing, the first piece, is getting that connection between your brain and your pelvic floor. And this is the rehab piece. This is what we call motor control. And this is what we need to have in place before we do anything else. Because exercise, strengthening, whatever it is that you want to do is not going to be effective if we don't have the proper connection between our brain and our core and our pelvic floor. And this can be something that's as easy as like thinking about, okay, I'm in bed and I want to just start to get that connection again. So before I get up, every time before I get up to feed the baby, whether it's, bottle or pumping or whatever, or every time I get up before I go to the bathroom, I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to think about gently engaging my pelvic floor, which means squeezing the muscles around the vaginal canal, like you're either going to stop urine, stop from passing gas. What I tell my mamas all the time, it's like picking up a blueberry with your vagina. You don't need to do like a super hard contraction, like a max contraction, but just start to like think, okay, can I even do that? Is my brain even connected to that? And what does that feel like? Okay, so it's gonna be hard after having a baby. Just like somebody who might have had their ankle in a boot, for example, they need to figure out how to move it again after the boot comes off. Or if your arm's in a sling, we can't just all of a sudden have full range of motion when we take our arm out of a sling. We have to connect again. We have to teach our body how to make those pieces move. And it's the same thing with the pelvic floor. So the first step is to start to really think about building that neural connection back. So before you get out of bed, think about doing a very gentle kind of exhale, lifting up your pelvic floor like you're trying to stop urine or gas, and starting to draw in your abdomen at the same time. So that's 3 pieces of what I call the foundation. And we go into this like in depth in the courses, but this is kind of the first step. The more you start to incorporate that into 1 or 2 activities that you do all the time, the more your brain is going to be like, oh, okay, I get it. Like this is what's supposed to happen. Like I remember this. I used to do this before I was pregnant. And it starts to become habit. And that's the most important thing. So it becomes automatic and you don't even have to think about it anymore. And your body just starts to do it. But what people don't understand is that takes time. That's a process. And we have to do that first before we start to exercise. So those 3 components are super important. And then we start to build on that depending on what you need to do every day. So to make it seem manageable and to make it the most effective, pick one thing. For me, it was every time I would feed the dog, every time I would bend over to lift something up, like my diaper bag or the dog food, or every time I picked up something off the floor. I would say like, okay, I'm going to exhale. I'm going to bring in my pelvic floor. I'm going to very gently bring in my abdomen. Then I'm going to go do whatever that activity is. And before you know it, you're doing it like 50 times a day because we're getting up all the time. And then when we start to do exercise, you've already got that piece in place and you've got the connection built, which is so, so important. And it puts you ahead of the game. So valuable for new moms to start to do this from like minute 1 all the way up to the 6-week mark and beyond. Okay, mamas, I hope that was helpful for you. If you're loving this and you're like, I need more of this, I would love to invite you to join our Thriving Mama community and our program Down There, Done Right. It's such a great, awesome community. And this course really was designed for moms just like you and me to help you bounce forward after having a baby, not backwards. It's so great if you're pregnant now, if you're recently postpartum, or even if you're 5, 10, 15 years postpartum and still experiencing symptoms like leaking pee, having back pain, painless sex, all of it. So if it sounds right for you, hit the link, join us. I can't wait to see you in there.